This presentation is aimed at giving a background to Shakespeare. I especially hope that my Swedish students who are reading or listening to the BBC4 program Shakespeare's Restless World are going to benefit from it. We better start with the most famous monarch of them all, and that's Henry VIII, the man who had 6 wives. He reigned from 1491 till 1547, and he had 3 surviving children who took turns in succeeding him, starting with his son Edward VI, who reigned from 1547 till 53 and died when he was just 15 years old. His eldest child was Mary, who then succeeded Edward, and she was the daughter of the first wife, Catherine of Aragon. She was a Catholic. Henry started out as a Catholic, but when he divorced Catherine of Aragon, he didn't get the permission from the Pope, so he turned Protestant. Edward was also Protestant, and Mary then was Catholic. And she is known to posterity by the name of Bloody Mary, because it wasn't safe anymore to be Protestant. She had 280 Protestants burned at the stake. She was married to Philip of Spain, who was also a Catholic. They ruled their countries together. She thought herself pregnant twice. She wasn't pregnant, but she fell ill and she died in 1558, after just 5 years on the throne. She was succeeded by her younger sister Elizabeth, who became Elizabeth I, and reigned successfully for quite a long time, despite various attempts to kill her. And she was also a Protestant. Let's have a look at Henry again. This is from a book for children that I got from Torre Abbey this summer. Torre Abbey being one of the monasteries that Henry VIII basically destroyed and demolished. It says here that in 1534 Henry VIII cuts all ties with the Pope in Rome and declares himself head of the Church of England. He then sets off selling off the monasteries to bolster the royal coffers. So he basically took all the money from the monasteries, tore down churches, and became rich in the process, and also made a lot of enemies, one of them of course the Pope. And one of the reasons he did this was that he wanted to get a divorce from his wife Catherine of Aragon, because he couldn't get a male heir. He had just this one daughter with Catherine, and that was Mary. Let's go on to the Scottish regents. We can start first with James V, and he reigned until 1513 and was then succeeded by his daughter Mary, then 6 days old. It might be easy to confuse the two Marys. We have Mary the First of England, Bloody Mary, and then we have Mary the First, Queen of Scots. Elizabeth, who was Mary's cousin, was a bit suspicious of her, so she had her put away in different castles and forced her to abdicate to her son, who became James VI, when he was just 1 year old, and his mother then spent the rest of her life, 18 years, in different castles and was eventually beheaded. But where do we find Shakespeare in all this? Shakespeare was born in 1564, and he did meet James. He was 2 years older than James, and Elizabeth, as we will see later on, so they were both contemporary with Shakespeare. Here are some major events in Shakespeare's life. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, and that's where he got married to Anne Hathaway when he was 18. She was considerably older. She was already pregnant, and they had their first child the next year, called Susanna. 2 years later they had twins named Hamlet and Judith, after 2 personal friends of the family. In 1588 the Spanish Armada threatened to invade Britain, and remember that we now had a Protestant queen, so England and Spain weren't exactly friends anymore. They also contested about the supremacy of the seas and conquest in the New World. And they wanted to restore Catholicism in England. So the Spanish had a lot of ships, a huge fleet, and troops waiting in the Netherlands. Nevertheless, luck was not on their side. They lost half of their fleet of 180 ships. The winds and weather were against them, and the English did their best to defend themselves and destroy the Spanish ships. Here is a story about one of them, called the Rosario. It collided with another Spanish ship somewhere outside Torquay. The English commander, Sir Francis Drake, was chasing the Spanish armada up the English Channel. The English used to call him El Draco. The Spanish used to call him El Draco, and they considered him to be some kind of pirate. And here, from the left, we see him approaching the Spanish ships, and when he came close, he shouts, "I am Francis Drake, and my matches are burning." The Rosario was full of gunpowder, and the whole ship would simply blow into pieces had they not surrendered, which they did. Elizabeth, at this difficult time, made her perhaps most famous speech at Tilbury, telling the troops that, "I know I have the body but of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too. And think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm." Here can follow the route of the Armada. They started out down here, and they went into the English Channel and saw some battle here, and didn't lose that many ships though, but they had to leave their anchors, sail all the way around Scotland, not being able to stop anywhere really because they had no anchors, and a lot of the ships were wrecked here on the west coast of Ireland, and here they returned again. If we go on to 1592, we can then see evidence of Shakespeare being famous. He obviously left the place where he was born, Stratford-upon-Avon, to be in London, and had probably been in London for some time, initially taking care of horses and somehow getting connected to an acting company. Eventually he was writing his own plays, and as I said, in 1592 he was famous at 28. The next year though, the theatres had to close because of the plague, which had another outburst, albeit a smaller one. The next year again we know that he performed for Queen Elizabeth at Greenwich, which was one of the castles or palaces she had inherited from her father, and who had a fondness for acquiring castles, as did his father before him. In 1996, Shakespeare's son, his oldest son Hamlet, dies. Why is unclear. It might have been the plague, we don't really know. And then in 1603 Elizabeth dies of old age. And what happened then is quite interesting, because we had James VI in Scotland, and he was related to Elizabeth, and he became king of England as well. So he was James VI of Scotland and James I of England. So now the two kingdoms are united. He liked the theatre, and he was the patron of Shakespeare's acting company, so they changed the name to the King's Men. And at Christmas, the same year as Elizabeth died, Christmas and New Year, they performed in front of James at Hampton Court, which was another of those palaces. At 1605 though, there was an attempt to assassinate James I, again by Catholics. James was Protestant, or had to be Protestant to be King of England, and the Protestants were disappointed that James was not more tolerant of their religion. And one Guy is famous here, and he was called Guy Fawkes, or Guido Fawkes when he was in Spain. He was good with gunpowder, so his accomplices put him in a cellar in Westminster Palace with all these barrels of gunpowder, 36 in total. So the plan was to blow up Westminster Palace with the House of Lords and James I in it. But somebody found out and sent an anonymous letter. So Guy Fawkes was caught and tortured, and all the members of the conspiracy were killed and quartered except Guy Fawkes, because he fell from the gallows and broke his neck. Their heads were put on stakes, and the heads were put on London Bridge. Probably that's one of the places where they could have been put on display. So Shakespeare would have seen heads put on London Bridge because he had to pass it every day, mainly to go to work and back again. James I, on the other hand, he made the Londoners light bonfires to celebrate his escape, and this is celebrated even today on the 5th of November. Now there's only one thing left to mention, and that's Shakespeare dying after just 52 years, and that was in 1616. And here you can see his monument at Stratford-upon-Avon and his very tombstone, which carries a warning to anybody who dare to move his bones. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. And that's all about Shakespeare for now. Thank you.